Hello, I'm Heather Holst-Knudsen, CEO of H2K Labs and your host of the Revenue Room podcast, where we talk about accelerating revenue, driving profitability, and fueling enterprise value utilizing data, digital, and AI. Joining us today is Matt Yorke, the CEO of The Channel Company, a global powerhouse in IT industry insights and marketing services. Matt brings over 25 years of experience transforming companies at the intersection of media, technology, and data. Matt is not only a friend and a professional peer, he serves on the executive advisory board of Revenue Room Connect and will also be in attendance at RevDup 2025, an event we are hosting for 125 CEOs and revenue critical C-suite teams who are focused on fueling enterprise value, leveraging data, digital, and AI. I'll share the link to that at the end of this podcast if you're interested in joining. Before taking the helm at the Channel Company in January 2024, Matt served as Global Chief Revenue Officer at Foundry, where he orchestrated significant growth through 4 acquisitions and transformed the company from a legacy media network into an integrated marketing and technology and data powerhouse. His impressive career includes leadership roles as Chief Digital Officer at North Star Travel Group, Chief Marketing Officer at Horizon, and Chief Development Officer at OMD. Matt is also widely recognized for his innovations in the media and technology space, earning numerous accolades, including Foundry's highest award for outstanding business performance and being named a Folio Industry Pioneer. Matt, welcome to the Revenue Room.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for a very generous introduction. I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. So you've been CEO of the Channel Company for just shy of 1 year, and I know I was trying to connect with you in the beginning, and you were doing so many things in this new role. So how's it going?
Yeah, so I mean, it's just coming up a year, as you say. It's just like 11 months. I mean, it's just absolutely flowing by. I just can't believe what a year it's been. To give you some context, since October 1st through to Thanksgiving, I did like 95,000 air miles.
Oh, wow.
And that's pretty much been my pace all year, give or take a little bit. But it's going great. I think it's anyone who's in B2B tech knows the market's still a little bit soft. We're coming out of that, but despite what you see with the crazy high market caps from the major players. But we've made great progress, like around integration and our systems. We built a new brand platform. We've launched in a couple of markets. So I feel like it's been a year to be proud of, and I think the teams have done just a really really good impressive job.
No, absolutely. And I have a question about the team you're building. But before we go into that, one of the things you and I just quickly chatted about before we kicked off this podcast is your really rich functional expertise due to the various roles you've had, including CDO, CMO, CRO, and now CEO. Can you talk about how that's really not only played into your success, but with the way business is, especially with the data and the pace of change, like why it's so critical actually to have all of those roles under your belt?
Yeah, great question. And like I would say, I think that those various roles and other roles I've held over my career are great preparation for a CEO type role, particularly when so much of a business success or enduring success comes from being able to leverage technology, right? And actually being able to think about tech stacks and business transformation, the implications, why you're building a tech stack, what you're trying to operationalize. And of course, the fuel to all of that is data. And so those roles they all had a lot of similarities, but the intersection was always around business transformation and finding growth. And it was always around, do you know enough about tech to ask the right questions? Do you know enough about the various players out there to be able to put together a stack that creates value from one of your underlying assets, which is normally data?
Absolutely. And I don't, we did a podcast earlier, I don't know, maybe about a year and a half ago, where we talked all about just how data is used to modernize the revenue organization.
Yeah.
And I have some questions about that down the road, but it's an often overlooked area about how important it can be to improving how you acquire, keep, and grow revenue. Um, well, it kind of leads into my next question. So, over the last 11 months, and actually, I think Wayne was your Wayne Zimmerman is your CRO that you've hired, you brought
Yep.
on board, and you also just brought on a new CFO. What were some of the key capabilities that were really critical for you and that you prioritized in hiring your new team?
Yeah, so I mean, I think when you come into these roles, you don't start with the view that you're going to make a lot of changes. It's just you've got to build a team that that meets the ambitions of the business, and you've got to make sure you have the organizational design to meet the ambitions of the business. Um, you know, first and foremost, you start with who you are and who you're not. Right? We're not a channel company. We're the channel company. One small word makes a massive difference. And so, the channel company is a B2B technology media marketing and information services business, right? It's not a channel company. And so from a CRO's point of view, I wanted someone who's steeped in tech, who's steeped in B2B media and has international experience and has a really strong discipline around the use of Salesforce and other sales operations tools. As it relates to the CFO, we're private equity owned, right? And so that there's a slightly different cadence when you're working with private equity. We meet every week, for example. So I wanted someone who's very comfortable in their PE background and had a lot of experience of that. Somebody also had international experience because we're in a lot of different markets and that creates complexities. And someone who was very strong around systems um, and understood how all of those things come together so that when you're operating in PE, if you say something, that is what is going to happen because that is very much the baseline.
Well, both roles obviously clearly have a huge understanding of data, that requirement, because just on that last one is that has a lot to do with, utilizing the data to not only identify potential value creation, but also to do accurate forecasting and, under promise, over deliver, as we all like to say.
Yeah.
So one of the other areas that you and I have touched on in previous conversations is the growth expectations of the PE firm and the investments that are required to meet this new uh, this accelerated pace of change where data, now it's AI, and you're there, you brought on to right the ship and keep it going with the current assets that you have, but on the flip
Mm.
side you also are charged with creating competitive moats for the business. So how do you manage that in terms of the board expectations and the private equity company?
Yeah, and I don't think those are kind of opposing forces, right? I think they're two sides to the same coin. I mean, look, first and foremost, revenue is the value driver, right? Because revenue allows you to do a lot of different things. You can always cut, right? And you should never be afraid to cut to create growth, but that isn't a long term strategy. That's basically about creating focus, and pushing resources into an area of growth. Um, so, what we're looking at is we're leaning into our brands, right? So, I think we have a really unfair advantage around CRM. It's an absolute powerhouse brand, definitely in the channel, and probably in all of B2B tech. At the same time, we kind of understand what's going on around us in the in the broader ecosystem, and so the trend is going to become our friend, and the trend is going to be just the accelerated spend you're going to see in the market, predominantly driven around AI and all the things it takes to deploy AI. We're going to grow where we have an ownership advantage. Again, that comes back to CRN. We're only in a handful of markets with that brand, so part of how we create revenue growth is by entering new markets with an unfair advantage, which is that powerhouse brand. That's part of us going local. And then it's just the way the work we've been doing around systems, um, data architecture, and taxonomy allows us to enter markets very, very, very quickly. And if you were to sum it all up, really what any private equity owner and really any owner I would suggest really wants to see is, the value lies in sustainable, profitable growth, right? You're just trying to get out of the peaks and troughs that that we all see at different points, and to create enduring value. And when I look at it, and I'm doing a town hall tomorrow. I've just done a town hall in Asia and a town hall in London, and I genuinely mean this when I tell the teams. 11 months in, I'm actually more excited now than when I joined, and I was like a kid in a candy store, because I just see so much opportunity for this business. When I talk to our customers, when I look at the markets, when I look at the macro trends, and I look at the assets that we have.
Okay, so I have a couple questions just on your answer right there. So the first one is the sustainable, predictable growth, which everybody wants. But in the traditional media context, it's almost impossible to do, because of this cyclical nature of, again, just talking about like the advertising side, the cyclical nature, and actually how not resilient it is to economic downturns. And well, we saw some certain events happen back in 2000. Where what are your thoughts in terms of getting to that predictable,
Yeah.
repeatable revenue?
Well, so I mean, look, we have several lines of business, right? We're not purely a media business, so about uh, about half our business is what you would call B2B media, and the other half is sitting inside of our consulting and agency business, right? So that's where we're getting paid to come in and do strategic consulting work, whether it's go to market messaging, positioning, sales enablement, education for tech vendors, right? So we do a lot of work um, with a whole host of vendors today around AI and positioning, and then how they can create the materials for their sales teams and their partners to actually obviously drive demand. Another part of our business is we have what's called concierge, where we're a virtual partner marketing manager. So we're an extension of organizations' partner marketing orgs, and it turns out that we can hire faster, better, and train and onboard quicker than the partners can. So they have us do it all around the world. Um, and when you see a downturn or customers cutting back, um, they'll come to that model. And when you see high growth and they can't hire quick enough, they come to that model. So it's actually a pretty resilient model. And then the last part of that agency business is where we're going out and building demand for partners, and creating the programs and the content and the advertising and the lead gen. So it's not purely a B2B media business. So like any portfolio, we might see certain things come down and certain things go up. Um, but when I look at the broader market, or to the question, right? So first off, sustainable, profitable growth doesn't just mean top line. I mean, obviously, we want it to mean top line, because um, that's how we create the highest value, because it allows us to do more things. But if we're growing our GP because we have price power, if we're launching new products or services that people will pay more for, we'll still look at that as success. But again, go back to where I started. CRN is only in a handful of markets. Each time we have a model where every time we enter a market, we know we can get that to a multi-million-dollar market very quickly and very, very cost effectively. And so it's just about staying, true to our values and the way we serve the market. Our customers are all global. So it's not like we're going somewhere and people are like, well, we're not there. Why are you going there? They're already there.
Hmm.
And they want to spend time and support the brand that's helping support their business and accelerate their growth.
In Europe, so well, the markets that you're So when you talk about entering new markets, you're talking about regional markets? Are you talking about industry? Like, is it both?
No, yeah, regional markets. So we entered Germany, for example, uh, very late last year. We ran our first event there this year. We had 300 people at that event. That will be double the size next year for sure. We just entered Asia Pacific via Singapore. So one of the reasons I was traveling so much, I was in Asia. So we launched CRN Asia in
Wow.
early November, well, formally in October, but the launch party was very early November. We're moving into Australia and New Zealand. So we're moving into these markets where our customers are, where we know there's market demand. We move in with that powerhouse brand. We'll normally launch 2 to 3 events in the first year. They typically get bigger. And then we have plans around our end user brands and how those can move into those markets as well.
Wow, that's exciting, actually. And launching into international markets is not easy. So,
No, but it's like if you look at my, so much, my entire IDG career was in international.
mhm.
And so it's the area I'm most comfortable with. And I kind of know that playbook very, very well. We've got a great team in London for our EMEA expansion plans. Um, and that when you have the playbook that I think we've now developed, it's very exciting because it's kind of back to the future. I can imagine Pat sitting around the table years ago going, "Hey, let's go to Germany," right? And
Yeah.
IDG built a great business in Germany or China. It's just a different world now. I don't need to look at print and postage and any of that stuff. I'm doing everything on a common tech stack, and I'm really looking at how quickly can I acquire data to feed the business needs.
Well, speaking of data, are you, because you're sitting on so much, it's just a tremendous amount. Are there any data specific products you're considering launching, i.e., uh, you know, first party data solutions that can help that let's say your advertisers or your customers on that side of the fence can subscribe to, or even on the flip side for the audience?
Yeah, so we have a couple of great, as you say, a couple of some really strong data assets. So we have a database of every MSP and channel partner in the world, and that's refreshed on a constant basis. Partly via people, partly via the research we do, and then partly via all the awards programs that we do. So we're continually updating that product or that data set we use when we're doing certain work for customers, whether it's with agency or the kind of more classic media side. We have something called MCI, which is Marketing Capability Index. So, for example, we'll work with a partner, let's say an HPE or an AWS, and we'll say, they're looking to grow their partner footprint, their channel footprint, and we can tell them, what mid-market retail in Spain looks like versus large cap financial services in Germany, right? And who are the best partners to break into those markets and go find new customers for you? So that product we use, and we sell that into research, we sell that into consulting. We launched a product earlier this year called Channel Accelerator that actually is kind of like the front end. It's like the marketing front end that sits in front of the data I just talked about, and we overlay that with intent data, and we kind of pull all of that together. And then we have a consulting business called iPad, where we do a ton of channel training and development programs and how to optimize your channel programs, and that lives off of this data as well. So we've got a number of interesting businesses. What we actually did this year, kind of, being really candid, is we've re-platformed that data into more of a cloud-based environment where we can begin to imagine new opportunities, new revenue opportunities around UX, etc. So now we're looking at that as we go into 2025, but it's off the core data set.
That's incredible. I mean, the scalability of that one data set being able to fuel all of those revenue streams is fascinating. So you say CRN has huge competitive advantage. It's got such strong brand, and you've obviously
Mm.
seen through the launches into these new international markets that you're walking the walk, not just talking the talk. Do you see, but there's always threat out there. Do you what do you see as a threat that you always have to keep your eye on to
Um,
maintain that moat?
yeah, so I mean, look, the events part of our business is there's something like 80, 90 more events in 2025 in our ecosystem than there were sort of 2 years prior. Um, our biggest marketing partners can also be some of your biggest competitors because they're typically building their own events and they're building kind of marketplaces. Um, so that's always a threat. I think um, nobody really quite fully understands the implications of AI, where you get answers versus links, and what that may mean um, to sites. But I think when you're in verticals, I think we're in a better place than kind of broader based information sources. Uh, and candidly, I would say fear. Right. I just think not having um, the courage to stick to the plan and to stick to the belief that um, the information we create helps drive the adoption of technology in all its different forms, and that's a really good mission to have in life, and to keep pushing.
Yeah, I know those are all really, really important and relevant, and the AI part is, I think, kind of goes hand in hand with fear because it's so unknown. But you hit on something really, truly important, and we are going to be talking about this a lot at Revved Up. Is that I think it is inherently different for a information resource that goes super deep and
Mm.
has such knowledge that you're never going to get, or I should never say never. It'll be very difficult. That right there, that industry expertise is part of your moat or and other B2B media or information service providers because it's not just what your editors and your content producers are creating, it's what your audience is doing and
Yeah,
asking for and in need of, and the behaviors that are also create part of that rich data environment. Um, so are you some but you obviously evaluated the business before accepting the role, and you noticed things that I would say in Matt's head, very process driven, standardization. I know he talked so much about that before. What were like the first five things that you said, we got to, if I just change these five things, things are going to be better right now? Um,
um, yeah. Well, that is a big question. Well, look, when you first come on board, the first thing you're doing is you're just on a massive listening tour, right? I mean, I've got pages upon pages upon pages of notes from meetings up and down the organization, and questions and stupid questions and more questions as I try to get under the hood and really understand what's going on. Um, I think it just comes back to the same sort of things, right? It's people, it's process, and it's product, and then lastly probably pricing. Um, so when we've made people changes, it's just about having the organizational design that supports our ambition. So we had three lines of business, we're now down two, right? Because it just didn't make sense. You were creating artificial silos and you weren't creating a good customer experience or journey. Um, some of our product probably wasn't where it needed to be. Um, that was reflected in the pricing, right? So you start to make yourself a sort of more of a fringe player in certain aspects of the business, and then process, right? If you don't have kind of common processes that are highly scalable and repeatable, everything is a challenge. And then when you get into that part of the world, then everything becomes you know margin elastic, right? So there's good days where the margins are where you think they're going to be, and there's a lot of funny days where it's because there's no standard process, the margins are compressed. And you just can't be in that position, right? You need to know that if we are working with a customer to solve this challenge and this is the solution, this is what happens, and these are our margins, right? And we know that wherever we are in the world, versus I'll let you know. But you just can't be in a situation where you've sold something to solve a problem for a customer, and then 6 7 months later you're discovering that you're not double digit margins that time, you're a single digit.
Hmm.
Right? It's just, that's just not acceptable in today's world.
Yep. Yep. Unit level economics is a uh, obviously the margins at that level are really important, and I don't think a lot of I think there's a lot of opportunity for many businesses to start really looking at that to help get their businesses in better, performing better. Yeah, Maya, I always like to talk about when we had all the logos, right? But half the logos were that we sold, which you wanted, um, were sold with these massive deals in place, and then the relationship became this. Well, we have to always do whatever
Yeah,
XYZ
yeah,
wants, and I'm your point. You're like, wait, are we paying them
yeah,
to
yeah,
work for us, like to advertise with us? Like, what's going on here? But yeah, but just to look at, profitability per customer, profitability per, customer tier level, how you actually apply resources towards those different levels to really maintain, the growth on that side, but also can't just keep throwing everything in. Like I always say, that my two hated words are discounting and value add, but I think I hate value add more. Um, so,
yeah,
all right. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
yeah. Well, I mean, look, you just made me think of something really interesting. So, um, you go back to process, and kind of the underlying theme here is obviously systems and thinking about data. Um, in our agency business, and and part of that is the consulting business. We now know our profitability by the project, by the customer, and then by the components of that solution. Right. So it helps us understand that we may not be charging enough for white papers. The overall project is in a good place, but we can drive margin improvement by actually charging more here. Or to your point, maybe this overall customer is not where it needs to be, and we need to address that. And so everything we do is now captured in a common environment, and it rolls up into our monthly report. So when we do the monthly close, and we obviously go through that with Eagle Tree, part of what we look at is actually our utilization rates and our margins across literally across every major customer.
That's so important, because the and consulting's hard because you have so many aspects that are soft but that are hard costs, which is the number of people who are working on the project. If things
Yeah,
get delayed, um, every day you're past the deadline are dollars.
yeah,
Um, Under scoping from the sales standpoint, like I that problem is a perennial one, but is the project being oversold in terms of what the outcomes are going to be? And so then you've got to apply more resources, or did you not scope it correctly and you're scrambling and having to hire
yeah.
and put more on? So getting that under control and really having a process around it, I would imagine, is changing things also for the better for the team. People don't realize how destructive it is when you have unprofitable customers for the team. Um,
Yeah, yeah, or how long certain things take, right? And then
mhm,
so they're, as you say, they're under scoping, and then it's like, oh, I just can't seem to, uh, you know, to get to where I need to get to. It's well because we're under scoping that part of the business, right? And we shouldn't be doing that.
absolutely. Do you get sales teams involved in understanding the profitability aspect of what they're selling so that they're clear on the impact selling correctly has?
Yeah, so we have some pretty good, some decent systems in place. So we use CPQ, so configure price quote, so they can't go off the ranch. On the event business, where obviously um, you can set limits and rules, right? So like they've got to come get permission to do certain things, um, and I would honestly say underselling is in terms of the the value add is not my concern. My concern when I think about the sales org is teaching an organization that's been very US centric to go bigger is the challenge, right? And actually to sit with their customers and say, well, let's lay out the map, tell me the markets you're interested in, and let's look at the brands we have and the events we have and the websites in those markets, and let's put that together versus, just let me sell you this US event.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you look at selling globally as more as an expansion effort or first out of the gate, like for, first contract?
No, it's an expansion effort in terms of getting people to think that way and not being afraid to have that conversation. Um, you're always going to have, having got so much experience of doing this with IDG, when you do those global deals, and there's no real global deals, but when you do those international deals, you still got a lot of activity going on beneath that deal because there's like, I've got budget, I need this, or I've got this, or we never got that. I've just got this come through. Um, so it's never going to be the all-in deal, but it creates a great platform for the business,
Mm-hmm.
and it creates a great platform for more of a strategic partnership with your customers because you know they'll see you as a more strategic partner. They'll see you as what I always say is the Monday morning call versus the Friday afternoon call, which is when
Yeah.
they're kind of giving out the sense.
Yeah, and actually, I would think with your larger enterprise accounts, it gives you more touch points within the business because certainly, IBM has, if that's one of your, your customers, they've got regional decision makers and budgets, so it allows you to, have more pokers in the fire. I don't know what that
Yeah,
expression is.
yeah, but it gives you a better platform for a more business oriented conversation than a sales conversation.
Yep. Well, let's move on to, um, you know, AI, and I'm going to ask about it in a different way. It's stepping at the spotlight, but there's so many misconceptions and gray areas about its capabilities or lack thereof, and the potential risks. And I feel like the confusion level is just still so huge. What are your thoughts on the value that AI
Um,
can offer or not offer?
yeah, so the hype cycle is off the charts, and obviously you hear about it uh, everywhere and all the earnings reports, etc. Um, and vast sums of money are being invested, but most of that is being invested by the hyperscalers, right? So it's kind of Google, AWS, Microsoft, and platforms like Facebook or Meta, rather. Um, so they're building like the infrastructure for massive cities because they know the potential, and they cannot afford to get left behind. So the capex is insane, which is ironically part of why the tech industry as a whole is a little bit soft because they're putting so much money to get ready for the future. They're cutting back, what they're spending in marketing and elsewhere today. Um, so the infrastructure is being put in place, and it's for the large part it's in place, but they continue to invest. What you don't see today is what I would call the application layer, which is okay, what's the business application for me, right? So okay, you've got Copilot, um, but Copilot, and it's good in certain things, like it's great in meetings like this, and it'll summarize the meeting, it'll give you the action points. I've seen it do some interesting things in like Excel, and I've seen it be absolutely useless on PowerPoint. But that will continue to get better and better. But you'll see an application layer come into various parts of, various verticals, and that will specifically solve business challenges. And then that, of course, will drive huge adoption as companies see, um, proof of concept. Um, when I look at it, it's going to be akin to the Industrial Revolution, right? Which is, um, you're not displacing people, you're dislocating people, right? So work in the Industrial Revolution moved from from agricultural to industrial. And a good way to think about AI is, if you're weak at something, if you're not very good at a task, it will make you good at it. But if you're good at something, it's going to make you like a superpower. You're going to be like a superhero at that particular task, because it will just make you that much more efficient. And so then that allows people to create higher value work and contributions. Um, so our expectations, and when we talk to customers and we talk to the channel, we talk to the end users, is that we're kind of getting we're either at the starting line now, or we're very close to the starting line really being fired. This year's been a lot of hype. I think as you go through next year and beyond for the next sort of 5+ years, you're just going to see massive, massive leaps in terms of the application of AI and the implications of that.
Do you see companies like the channel company being able to actually, when you talk about application of AI, provide an application of AI for their customers within your existing environment?
So we're already doing that within the agency part of our business. So where we have a creative business. So they're able to spin up multiple variations of creative in what used to take days is now hours. We use it in the editorial teams where the written word can create a video in minutes. So that allows us to think very differently about content. We use it today within our global network. So, for example, um, when we launched Germany, we have one editor in Germany. But if you look at the amount of content on that site, you'd be absolutely amazed. You'd think this man well, he is actually, he's a crazy hard worker. But what he takes is he takes the content from the US and the UK, and then we run that through Copilot. It's translated. Um, it's reviewed by human to make sure that it makes sense, and then that forms some of the content, and then the rest of the content is coming purely from his own efforts locally. And so as we start thinking about expansion, right, knowing that if I wanted to launch in Japan, I can have 60% of my content coming straight off the .com and just have it adapted, and then the other 40% coming locally, totally changes the model of how I enter a market.
Interesting, absolutely, and that's the German editor. I have to take a look at your site. That's because I did take a look earlier on a few of your sites. I don't think I saw that one, but that
Yeah,
one
and
person.
it's amazing. Like, but it's and all the content now is for the German audience. There's core German content, and then there's .com content that we knew that they were going to anyway, but it's translated and it's checked, right?
Mhm.
So we're not saying just AI. It's not. Somebody's taking the original content that was written by an editor, and then going over it to make sure that it's both relevant and that obviously that it reads and it makes sense.
No, I mean I'm not an editor, but you know, I use AI to do a tremendous amount with content, but it's the core idea I have, and then how do I repurpose this into a blog or social media posts, or would this
Yeah.
be a great podcast? So it helps a lot with writer's block as too. Um,
Yeah, I think for that stuff, it creates a great framework, right? When you sort of sat looking at a piece of paper and you just can't get that first thought out,
mhm.
it creates the framework, and then you go, oh, okay, I now know what I'm doing. Like, yeah, it's not hard for me to fill in the blanks.
Yep. Well, let's move on to, I have two more questions for you before we conclude. But One of the things that I really, really love talking to you about, when you were CRO of Foundry, and I imagine all of this is happening at the channel company, is just you had such precision over the way you looked at revenue and how, standardization and all of the processes, everything from when a lead was, is acquired, put into the system, how it's handled,
Mm.
how it goes all the way through pipeline, once it's closed. Um, can you, and not a lot of executives get this, how critical and important. It's like, yes, we have a CRM system. They're entering the information in, there you go. But if you don't have all of these other things in place, it kind of almost doesn't matter if they're entering in things in the CRM because is it really accurate? Um, why is this so important? And what were the steps? What steps do you feel are just, if as a CRO entering into a business, they're like the must absolute things you do?
So you got to have you got to have. Well, I guess you got to start with what is it you're trying to do, right? So, for us, it's about if you look at the channel company, it's sort of three or four acquisitions that were done quite quickly. So you went from CRN as a US brand with an agency business to a consulting business to a bigger agency business to a UK business to a APAC business, right? So it's first is okay. I need to understand if 60% is 60% over here, it's got to be 60% over there, right? I can't have 60% equal 20%, right? Because otherwise it's impossible. Um, so what you're looking for is predictability. You're looking for consistency. Um, so part of that's a tech challenge, right? And we've just about finished that work, particularly when we think about quote to cash. Was done, but the quote to cash side is harder. Um, Part of it is then just an ongoing behavioral aspect of making sure that the data, we have clean data, right? Like so data hygiene, um, and having a system and a kind of modus operandi or cadence of looking all the time and going, well, how is something in there for 100 days, right? This thing's been sitting there and it's skewing our data set, and then working with whomever is sitting on that to clean it up, kill it, remove it, whatever it is, but getting people to understand that um, we're not asking you to do something that's one more thing for you to do. We're asking you to do something that's fundamental to the long-term success of this business, because I can't make decisions if somebody tells me, "Oh, well, don't worry, in Germany, 60% is really 80%, so it's better than it looks." What does that mean? Like, well, how am I supposed to, present that to the board or have a conversation with our CFO? Like, so we have to be able to know. And so all the things we did at Foundry, we do here with, we're tracking religiously close rates. We track it by various group, by product. We're tracking meetings, whether they're in person or real meetings. We're tracking ACVs, and we're tracking all of those things because they're tiny little grains, right? They're just little grains of insight, but you get enough grains, you get a beach, right? So they're little bits of sand, and they allow us, in month by week, end of month, to take a view. Did this month behave like we thought it was going to behave? And what does that tell us about the month we're in, or the upcoming month?
Right, absolutely. And it also allows you to see those little grains. Sometimes those little grains are really important and become bigger grains because you could scale something like, ooh, this ICP behaves really well when these steps are taken to close. We have a
Yeah.
much better close rate. So it allows you to take um, things that are working and expand them out. So um, all right. Well, listen, we're at our time. So first of all, I just wanted to say we're super lucky to have you on our executive advisory board for Revenue Room Connect.
Thank you.
And clearly you joined because something about it excited you. And I was just wondering if you could share with the audience, why you think Revenue Room Connect is important as well as, Revved Up.
Well, I think, look, I mean, I think you can, you're doing kind of God's work in a way, right? Like it's really important that um, r running a business is is a lot of different things, and people are a big part of that. But process is so unbelievably important, and being able to create predictable revenue streams, predictable profit streams, um, which is partly the systems, it's the behavior that you're demanding of people, but it's recognizing that daily activities are like a data flywheel, and that's creating really valuable data for the business. It's not just customer bought this, didn't buy that. It's all the things that are going on around those outcomes that help us, that create value for us as businesses. And it's a totally different form of first party data when we talk about data. So I think the work you and the team are doing is really important, particularly as we move into an era of AI, because AI is about big data, right? And it's about creating competitive advantage. And but if you don't have common data sets, and if you don't have a taxonomy, it doesn't matter what LLM you put over the top of it, you're not going to get very far.
That is one of the biggest parts of education, I think, that has to AI does not exist unless you have the single
Yeah,
source of truth and the, as you say, the taxonomy and data hygiene. It's pointless. It's just
yeah,
going to tell
it's not
you
good.
what.
It's nothing it can do. It can't possibly. What's it going to learn? It's just
Yeah.
going to learn a lot of gobbledygook.
Yep. Well, all right. So now for the fun part. The I have a little couple of rapid fires that I always like to do, and the first one I always do is a tea or coffee.
Despite being an Englishman, coffee. I love black coffee. It's my favorite.
Oh, black coffee. I love coffee, but haven't gotten into the black part yet. I just bought one of those coffee machines that does the cappuccino milk
Oh
frother
yeah,
automatic.
yeah. You can do all that stuff. Yeah.
Oh my
Mm.
gosh, it's terrible. I think I've gained 5 pounds because of it. Um, what is, when you moved to the US, what was a characteristic that really surprised you?
um, Even though I'd been coming here a lot, I'd always been coming here obviously on business, and so would make an effort. I think when you live here, you realize it's a lot less social than Europe. Europe is a lot more social in the work environment.
Yeah, and having gone to the UK quite a bit, I definitely saw that. I'm always so
Yeah,
jealous. I'm like, look at them all hanging out together.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a totally different environment.
That's interesting. And then, what's the best book you've read?
So the last couple of years, I like historical fiction or you know history. I read a book called In the Enemy's House, and it's a true book about how sort of failing FBI agent and a code breaker from World War II came together to uncover the fact that Russian spies were operating in the US and stealing military and atomic secrets and actually break that spy ring.
Wow.
And it started with just one tiny little throwaway of a piece of paper. Um, I mean, it's a true story, but it's written, kind of fast paced and kind of fiction oriented, but it's historical fiction. It's fantastic.
Well, that just gave me an idea for a couple Christmas gifts for a few people I know who also like historical fiction.
Yeah. Now, there's so many great spy books around World War II. Some of the stuff that went on just is insane.
Yeah, yeah. I just saw a couple movies this weekend as I was decompressing, my 20-person Thanksgiving dinner
Yeah.
about World War II. So, well, listen, thank you so much for joining us. For our listeners, you can look up Matt Yorke with an E at the end on LinkedIn. Matt also will be with us at Revved Up, which takes place February 25th through the 27th in Sarasota, Florida. The focus is fueling enterprise value, utilizing data, digital, and AI. And if you'd like more information, just go to h2klabs.com/revved up with two V's. Thanks again, Matt.
Heather, thank you. See you soon.